E1 Teleportation Theory, a conceptual interdisciplinary framework. Ladies and gentlemen, this presentation introduced E1 Teleportation Theory not as a finished technology, not as science fiction, and not as a claim of imminent human teleportation, but as a conceptual scientific framework. The central idea behind E1 is simple yet profound. What if teleportation is not about moving a physical body through space, but about transferring and reconstructing a complete state of information? This theory brings together insight from physics, information theory, neuroscience, and philosophy of science to explore that question responsibly. The image you see represents the idea visually. On one side, a human state encoded as information and energy. On the other, a reconstructed state not transported through space, but reassembled locally under strict physical constraint. It is important to emphasize from the start. E1 teleportation theory is conceptual. It respects non-physical laws, acknowledges current human limitation, and doesn't propose a working device or near-term application. My goal in this presentation is not to convince but to invite dialogue, to explore how far scientific reasoning can go and where its boundaries currently lie. I am Dr. Iwan Ratman, and I invite you to examine this framework with curiosity, skepticism, and openness, the very foundation of scientific progress. What E1 is and what it is not. Before going any further, it is essential to clearly define the scientific position of E1 teleportation theory. E1 is logical scientific construct. It is built within the boundaries of current human knowledge and is meant to be examined, questioned, and tested conceptually. What E1 is? It is an attempt to describe teleportation as a problem of information, energy, and physical constraints, rather than a problem of moving matter instantaneously through space. It treats teleportation as a state-based process, grounded in known scientific disciplines and open to falsification. Equally important is what E1 is not. It is not a miracle explanation. It is not instant teleportation, and it does not violate the laws of physics. E1 doesn't claim that human teleportation is currently possible, nor does it suggest that existing technology is close to achieving it. This clear separation is intentional. Without boundaries, scientific discussion becomes speculation or belief. With boundaries, it becomes a disciplined exploration of what may or may not be achievable in the far future. This sets the tone of everything that follows. E1 is an invitation to think rigorously, not a promise of technology. Formal representation of a human state. To discuss teleportation responsibly, we must first answer a fundamental question. What exactly is a human being in scientific terms? In E1 teleportation theory, a human is not treated as a single object, but as a dynamic system that changes over time. This idea is expressed in a simplified formal representation. Ht equals to function of B, function T, N function T, M function T, Q function T, and C function T. Its components represent a different layer of the human state. B function T refers to biological state, cells, tissues, and organs. And function T represents the neural state, the structure and activity of the nervous system. M function T captures memory, learning, and accumulated experience. Q function T represents quantum constrained microstates physical conditions governed by quantum laws. See quantum T, function T refers to consciousness correlates, pattern associated with awareness which are still not fully understood by science. The key idea here is not mathematical precision, but conceptual completeness. If teleportation were ever possible, it would require preserving all of these components, not just the body and not just information in isolation. This slide explains why teleportation is an extraordinary difficult problem. It is not about copying a shape, but about maintaining continuity across multiple layers of reality. With this framework, Iwan treats teleportation as a state reconstruction problem rather than physical movement through space. Core postulates of Iwan teleportation theory. At this point, Iwan teleportation theory introduces a set of core postulates. These are not conclusions, but confidential assumptions that define the boundaries of the framework. The first postulate is that teleportation is the transfer of state, nor matter. In Iwan, nothing physically travels from one location to another. Instead, what is transferred is the complete informational and physical description of a system. The second postulate states that there can be no duplication of humans. This aligns with known physical principles, including no cloning theorem, and addresses deep ethical concerns. Teleportation, if it exists, must not result in copies. The third postulate requires continuity of identity. Without continuity, the process would not be teleportation. It would be replacement. This postulate protects the meaning of personal identity. The fourth postulate affirms that the laws of physics remain valid. Energy conservation, causality, and entropy are not bypassed or ignored. The fifth postulate emphasizes that teleportation is a process, not an instant event. Time, energy, and control constraints always apply. Finally, the sixth postulate recognizes that human teleportation is a civilizational issue, not merely an engineering challenge. It would affect law, ethics, social structure, and governance. Together, this postulate ensures that Iwan remains a disciplined scientific framework, not speculative fiction. How Iwan teleportation would operate conceptually. Having defined what teleportation means within Iwan, we can now outline how such a process would conceptually operate, not as a machine design, but as a logical sequence. The first step is complete informational recording of the object state. This includes biological structure, neural patterns, memory quantum constraint, and other physical parameters. Nothing is assumed to be simple or partial. The second step is state transfer through an energy-mediated signal. What moves is not matter, but structured information carried by energy, subject to physical limits such as noise, entropy, and causality. The third step is local reconstruction at the destination. Available matter and energy at the target location are recognized to match the transmitted state. A crucial point illustrated here is that no physical body travels through space. There is no object moving faster than light, no tunnel, and no violation of non-physical principles. This conceptual sequence explains why teleportation is fundamentally different from transportation. It also explains why the challenges involved are enormous, not just technical but informational and physical at the deepest levels. This slide shows that Iwan teleportation is best understood as a reconstruction problem governed by physics, not by imagination. Time, information, energy relationship in Iwan theory. This slide introduces a limiting relationship, not a predictive formula. Its purpose is to explain why teleportation is currently impossible rather than to suggest how to build it. The expression sound relates four fundamental elements: time, information, energy, and space-time control. In simple terms, the more information a system contains, the more energy and time are required to transfer and reconstruct it accurately. Human being represents an extreme case. The informational complexity of a human body, brain, and consciousness is extraordinarily high. Another crucial factor shown here is our limited ability to control space-time. At present, this capability is effectively close to zero. This alone makes human teleportation invisible. This relationship demonstrates an important principle. Teleportation is not blocked by imagination, but by fundamental physical limits. It therefore serves as a reality check. It reinforces that even teleportation theory respects known constraints and explains, in clear terms, why this remains a vague future question, not a near-term technology. A hypothetical scientific trajectory. This slide presents a hypothetical trajectory, not a prediction and not a roadmap for guaranteed progress. It is meant to illustrate how scientific capability might evolve if certain breakthroughs were ever to occur. In the near term, research focuses on quantum state transfer at very small scales, a field that already exists in laboratory setting, though in limited and highly controlled forms. Moving further into the future, the challenge expands to biological information storage and reconstruction. This would require understanding life at a depth far beyond what we have today. Beyond that point, progress would depend on energy mastery and space-time control, area where current human capability is minimal. The final horizon shown is intentionally uncertain. The question mark is essential. It acknowledges that science doesn't advance on schedules and that some problems may remain unsolved indefinitely. The slide exists to emphasize humility. It shows that even teleportation theory doesn't assume success. It only explores logical dependencies between knowledge, energy, and capability across time. Ethical and civilizational constraints. Up to this point, we have discussed teleportation as a scientific and conceptual problem. The slide reminds us that it is also a human and civilizational issue. The first concern is identity. If a human state is reconstructed elsewhere, we must ask, is the person truly the same individual or merely a perfect replacement? Without a clear answer, teleportation loses its meaning. The second concern involves the moral and legal status of a reconstructed being. Question of rights, responsibility, and personhood arise immediately. The third concern is energy inequality. Any technology requiring fast energy resources risks deepening global inequality and concentrating power. Finally, there is the issue of governance and misuse. A capability of this magnitude would demand unprecedented regulation, oversight, and ethical consensus. This slide makes one point very clear. Teleportation cannot be treated as an engineering project alone. Without ethical framework, scientific progress can become social harm. Even teleportation theory includes this constraint by design, not as an afterthought. This slide situates even teleportation theory within the existing body of human knowledge. This framework doesn't stand alone. It draws from multiple established disciplines. From physics, it relies on relativity and quantum mechanics, which define the limits of space, time, energy, and causality. From information theory, it adopts the idea that complex systems can be described, transferred, and constrained by informational content and entropy. From neuroscience, it recognizes that memory, identity, and consciousness are physical processes, still not fully understood but essentially to any discussion of human state. From philosophy of science, It borrows critical tools to examine identity, continuity, and the meaning of explanation itself. The references shown here are not presented as a proof teleportation. They serve as intellectual foundation, demonstrating that Iwan is a synthesis of known ideas rather than a speculative leap without grounding. The slide reinforces an important principle. Scientific progress happens by building carefully on what is already known. As we conclude, it is important to return to the original purpose of this presentation. Iwan teleportation theory is not a claim of technological achievement. It is a conceptual framework designed to clarify what teleportation would truly require, physically, informationally, and ethically. Throughout these slides, we have seen that teleportation is not blocked by imagination, but by fundamental limits. Limits of information complexity, energy availability, space-time control, and ethical governance. The value of Iwan lies not in promising solution, but in defining the problem clearly. Science advances when questions are framed correctly. This framework is therefore an invitation to physics, information theorists, neuroscientists, philosophers, and policymakers to examine, critique, refine, or reject it through open inquiry. Progress in science has always come from collaboration across disciplines and cultures. If Iwan contributes even a small step toward clearly thinking about the limits of human knowledge, it has served its purpose. Thank you for your attention, and I welcome thoughtful discussion.